Hi, everybody. Good morning. Really excited to be back for another Data is Love with one of my really dear friends, colleagues, co-conspirators, Ashley Brown, who's the founder of Claire Fertility. Um, let's dive right in. Ashley, hi. Thank you so much for being here. Um, will you just start with telling us a little bit about like who you are and why Claire?
Absolutely. Good morning to you. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. Um, a little bit about me. My background is in assisted reproduction, go figure. I had a dual career in LA for many years in assisted reproduction as a clinical executive on the third party side. So that's egg donors, gestational carriers, and got really intrigued by the space and especially the science, and had a segue into the clinical side of things. So worked in clinical administration and coordination, and learned a lot about the patient experience, learned a lot about the clinical experience, and saw some holes and areas for improvement to make the process a lot better for women. And took a little sabbatical to Paris towards the end of 2019, and to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to marry that and kind of my creative career. The other part of that dual career was contract creative and digital media and advertising. And Claire came to me while I was in Paris, which is why it's Claire, which is clear in French. So Claire was
Hey.
born, and yep, hopped into an accelerator, and we're off to the races.
Uh, I love that. I feel like instead of talking about like femtech and fertility, we could actually talk about like the benefits of taking time off because that's when our brains just have a moment to catch up and start piecing things together, right? And like amazing ideas and companies are born out of vacations. I think Uber Cab was also born in Paris.
I learned that
Um,
very recently watching the show about it. Yes, I did not know that, and I'm like, "Oh, that's totally my story too." But, I mean, Paris is a very creative place. It has such an energy. I felt so free. I did nothing but walk and eat and drink, and it just opened my mind and relaxed me to the point that I was able to figure out and put together something that I've been trying to figure out for a while, actually. I knew that I wanted to do something like this. I just wasn't quite sure what it was. So that's what it did for me.
I love that. Okay, but I do want to talk to you about femtech and fertility, and just starting with that language. I don't think that we hear about the words femtech very often. What is this field? What are the goals of it?
The goals of it definitely are to improve women's health across the board. And what's very unfortunate is that I believe the statistic is that only 4% of all of the medical related studies over the past 50 years have been done specifically on women. So much of women's health is based on men's bodies and biology. Drugs are tested on men, procedures are tested on men, and the differences in the biology are not explored. And so it is more difficult. And actually, that's kind of our mission at Claire, is a holistic look at each person. Everybody's different, but particularly, reproductively speaking, we are very different from men. And so that is really the goal of Femtech, is to formulate science that is specifically targeted for a female biology. And it's across the board, femtech. I think it's very heavily focused on fertility. And it seems that way probably, from an arbitrary point of view, but it's really heart, it's cardiac, it's neurology, everything related to improving the health and lives and longevity of women. And so that's really the space. And people are doing amazing things, even with menopause and maternal health. So it really is across the board, and it's a really exciting field. And I will say, of all of the areas of tech that I've been exposed to, it's the most generous. The founders are always so impassioned, and we're generous with one another. And so I'm really honored to be a part of the space.
I'm just still thinking on two things that you said. One, that only 4% of medical related studies have been done on women, which is wild because we are at least 50% of the population, if not more, in certain places. But the second thing that I'm thinking about is formulating science specifically for the female body. It's 2022, and like, why have we not been having these conversations sooner? Um, Before we talk about fertility specifically, like, I'm curious if and I know that you did this, right? You were like digging into the research and the data. Um, how does fertility and having kids impact women's career?
Well, that was something that we looked at very early and actually hired a great writer from the UK to do a piece for us that will be on a blog on our website soon. But the research that she did for that was so fascinating. And sorry, there's going to be sounds like a fire truck coming.
All good.
The joy of working from home. So what she found was that 85%, which didn't surprise me with my personal experience, but just seeing the number was kind of stark, that 85% of women that went through fertility treatment had, issues in the workplace. They felt that it affected their job. And that, is stark. And the reasons it was kind of broken down. But another statistic that was interesting is that I think 43% of them told no one at work that they were going through treatment, whether it was a privacy issue, whether there was some shame there. And, without people knowing why you have to go to these frequent appointments or kind of be gone, from the office when you're in an office environment,
Mhm.
it's, that makes it doubly stressful. It's already something that's exhausting, expensive, confusing. There's all these things that you're going through. It's stressful in a relationship if you're doing it with a partner. And then to have to think that your job may be in peril. Another thing that's really that saddens me is that a lot of people that are going through treatment and they have to go through it for a long time, multiple cycles, they tend to hold themselves back at work. They don't want promotions. They're terrified to, be promoted or to be noticed at work because they're planning for a baby. And so, that can go on for years. And so sometimes if people come out on the other side and they still don't have the family that they desired, and they've also held themselves back in their career, that's incredibly depressing. So that's another way that women struggle. And I think if there was more workplace support, then they wouldn't have to go through that. You would be able to still advance in your career, still focus on your career. And honestly, I think a lot of this is alleviated just by hybrid workplaces where you can have control of your own time and not have to be face to face in the office. You can, work around your own schedule and work the things in that you need to work in.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about, when it comes to fertility and women's health care and reproductive care in particular, how, because our health benefits are tied to our jobs and they're not consistent, like, I could work in a place that offers 100% coverage of, let's say, IVF treatments. Um, if that's what I need to do to start a family, and if that's what I want to do to start a family, I'm not even going to look for another job, because what if that employer doesn't offer that benefit, and then I have to stop my treatments, or if I switch employers and it's not covered, then I'm, paying for it out of pocket. And that's something that, yes, I'm sure like families have to think about, but I think that women are saddled with the burden of a lot of that decision making.
100%, 100%. And it's kind of a burden in one hand because, it's great that the jobs are thinking about this in terms of employee benefits, but it does, keep people chained to a certain job or certain industry, even because it still is very limited in terms of the number of industries that are looking at that. Tech disproportionately is one of them. Definitely tries to support, especially because advancing in a tech career, some women tend to delay, starting families. And so because they're starting families older, they need the assistance of assisted reproduction. But these days there are just as many young women who need it as well. So it really is important for more industries, particularly ones like medicine, if people work for a hospital system, or law careers that require women to delay to some extent beginning a family because of the rigor of advancing in that space.
What a cruel, I think, double-edged sword. What a cruel double-edged sword, right? Like, in certain careers, you have to put in a lot of hours, which, I mean, you've told me that just getting 8 hours of sleep increases your hormonal functions by 20% or more, so that it's easier to get pregnant. But in certain professions, and I think increasingly in every profession, you're working a lot, you're sleeping less, and you're putting off having kids for many reasons. Career is one, but I think as older millennials, we're also putting them off for financial reasons. And now you want to start a family and you need a lot of help, and you feel stuck because of the way in which it's so deeply connected to your health benefits, but also your career. I mean, I think, like, how do we use tech and to start to untangle some of these pieces and take control of our lives a little bit more?
I will say, as you were saying that, I think about her often. Actually, it was a client that I worked with years ago. I was really young and kind of new to the space at the time, and I think she was in her very early 40s. She was really struggling. She and her husband had been struggling for some years to begin a family, and she told me, don't end up like me. I spent my 20s and my 30s making all of this money, and I'm spending all of it in my 40s to get what I wanted back then and didn't do. And that was, it really hit me. Science has changed a lot since then. I would say it's probably about 12 or 13 years ago. This is a rapidly evolving space. But in terms of using tech to improve it, we are focusing very much on integrative health and how to tech enable that integrative health experience, because across the board, not just when you're having fertility treatment, but in general, women can benefit from really paying attention to our holistic health. The 5 areas that we're focusing on are behavioral health, sleep health, sexual health, nutrition and fitness, and lifestyle medicine. But really paying attention to root causes of any issues that you're having. If you have ovulation issues or irregular periods, that comes from something. Our nutrition, the way that we eat, the way that we move our bodies, all of this kind of plays into our hormonal function and regulation. And we want to make it easier for women to actually live those lives, because, as you said, I mean, it's incredibly difficult in the world that we live in. We live in a very capitalistic society. People are trying to advance in their careers, and it is difficult to pay attention to your health to the degree, as particularly if you have to navigate challenges, that it would be easier for you to conceive. And so really beginning, even at a young age, of paying attention to your integrative health, but certainly when you're ready to, begin a family, really paying attention to that, how you're optimizing your sleep health, how your behavioral health plays such a huge part in it. I think over 60% of women have, deep anxiety when they're going through fertility treatment. It is likened to and on the level of cancer patients. And so the anxiety and depression. And so obviously, that will affect your body, your physiology as well. So those things that we tend to think of as a luxury, they're actually really essential to the ability to conceive and to our reproductive health.
I've seen a couple of friends very recently go through fertility treatments in the last couple of years, as a result of all of the things that we've been talking about, right? This like managing career and sleep and time and now our ages. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, how in such a short period of time their body changes, right? Like in the parts of your body that swell up and all of the discomforts that you're having. And so, in addition to the things that you have to manage, you're also like managing a body that like no longer belongs to you. It feels like that, right? And so, I'm just curious, right? What is the responsibility of the partners? Um, right? Like the non
Yes.
um birthing non-treatment partners, if we're choosing to do this with somebody else, and then what's the responsibility of like our employers other than ensuring that we have really great benefits? What should companies be doing?
Well, to that end, I know there are a lot of women who feel, and I cannot remember the statistic, but it was also in that piece that that young woman wrote for us, that a very high number of women feel that their employer could benefit from education. And I think that it really starts with education, understanding, and even asking. Is there any way that we can support you in whatever you might be doing? It's somebody's prerogative, it's an employee's prerogative to mention whether or not they're going through treatment, but leaving it open and not making people feel ashamed for what they might be trying to do, or
Mhm.
penalized in any way is really important. So understanding what that journey is like, and the ways in which the workplace can be supportive, if that is hybrid work, if that is checking in to see if there's a certain time when there may, perhaps around the time of a procedure that they can take on a lighter workload or have some other support from other people in the team. Those are priceless to someone going through treatment because it just takes that stress off so that they can focus on what is actually another huge stress. In terms of reproductive partners, it's so funny. I spent yesterday, I went to brunch with a friend yesterday. We spent a lot of time talking about this, but that so when there are different types of reproductive partners, number one, and I've worked with all of them, education is important there as well. And a lot of times the person going through treatment also needs that education, just basic anatomy sometimes, and understanding how your body works, because a lot of us have not been taught those things. Very, unfortunately, there's a lot that we don't know about our own bodies. So making sure, first of all, that the person going through treatment understands their own body and what's happening and what may happen and what's normal and what's not. And then also the partner, and acknowledging too that they are also having a journey and they also have their own integrative health concerns that go along with being a reproductive partner. And so, really having a forum and somewhere for them to ask questions, whether that is their physician's office, or Claire Fertility is also perfect for that. We want to make sure that they're engaged and that they understand. I can't tell you, I've had several men very recently reach out to me, via Twitter, via other places, to have conversations that I don't even know if they told their wives about, but they just need somebody to talk to about this. And so it is important to keep them engaged and make them understand their part in it, both to alleviate any stress on their partner and on themselves as well.
Yeah, and start showing up differently, right? Like early on, we don't have to wait for kids to be born for partners to show up. Yeah, and I just, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about how many more men, and I, also want to recognize that we're speaking about gender right now in a really binary way, and it's not. But how many more men are people managers and leaders and decision makers? And what a world of difference it would make if they really understood what their employees go through, right? And what their partners go through, and the time and the energy that it takes, and the consequences for workplaces when someone doesn't feel supported. It just takes them longer to get their work done, right? Because they're spinning on a hell of a lot of other things. And they're worrying about, how to tell their boss that there might be a day in a week where they are going to have to jet with very little notice.
That's right.
And
And I mean, it happens all the time. And you know, all types of things come up while you're having treatment. And so just having that supportive environment is super important. I will say though, in terms of tech enabling this space, for our pilots, upcoming pilots, we're partnered with several companies that I'm really, really excited about because we're very heavily focused on data. And one of them is a company, Prove. They do hormone testing, and it is testing that you can do at home. It's urine based, it's app, connected. And this is a big change because for years it's been that women have to leave work just to go to LabCorp or Quest Diagnostics or run to their doctor's office to have a blood test.
mhm,
That, you go, it's not just running in, having the blood test, leaving. You go, you sign in, you sit there for 30, 40 minutes just to have blood drawn to leave, for someone to call you hours later and tell you, what those are. You're, feverishly checking the website to see if your results come up. Being able to just do that at home and have it app connected and have everything explained to you in one place is a huge development, because it just
mhm,
burden off of having to, deal with a commute and deal with a waiting room. So these are some of the ways, that's one example in which it is becoming easier, for this process to be undertaken and live your normal life at the same time, or attempt to live, something close to a normal life. But, just taking away that burden of having to show up somewhere and wait and all of that, that's a huge change. And so things like that are popping up more and more all the time, and it does alleviate some of the strain, but it doesn't erase the need for the workplace to be a safer place for women that are navigating this journey.
and for women that are navigating this journey that are hourly workers, I know that we really bonded a couple of years ago because of our love for being, heavily focused on data and being data informed, data driven, all of the things. And I think more recently, as I've been talking with companies and leaders about the shifts that they're making, right? Like people obviously want a new workplace contract, and I think being hybrid or remote is only one part of the conversation, but it's largely a conversation that people like us are having, folks whose jobs pretty easily transferred home, right? Like you just said that you hadn't left your house in like 12 days because you were just working from
Yes.
home. But women, and women of color in particular, are predominantly working in hourly wage work, and they're working in jobs that don't transfer to a home office, right? They're working in hospitality and retail and a lot of service industries. And so, what does I guess I'm curious, like, what is the responsibility for employers with that kind of a workforce? Because leaving your job for 2 hours to do a blood test or anything is costly. It's really expensive to you. And yeah, how does femtech improve access for women that don't have the convenience of a hybrid work environment?
That's such a great question. And it's definitely something that's been at the forefront of my mind. I will say, disproportionately, and this is really unfortunate, throughout my career, I worked with very few hourly wage workers, and it's mostly because they cannot afford to undertake, by and large, some, fertility treatment. And that's unfortunate. And so, really democratizing the accessibility to this space is number one with that. Even, beyond, anything else that we could talk about, it's really making it more accessible. And that definitely is something I think we are working towards, and a lot of fertility, new fertility startups and fertility companies are actively working on. To that end, also, though, I would say it is about paying women more. So
Mm, say
that is
it.
that's a big one, because they shouldn't have that issue, and also making sure that they have benefits that allow them to undertake this type of treatment, because obviously it's very difficult to pay for it out of pocket. But if you have a payer situation, which, two former patients come to mind that actually did, they were hourly workers, but they had the insurance that supported it. I mean, that makes all the difference when you don't have to think about that. And it also motivates you more at work, right? Whatever you're doing, it is a lot easier to do it when you feel like your workplace supports the type of life that you want to live and the family that you want to build. So having that in mind, in any type of workforce, but particularly for hourly workers who don't necessarily have nest eggs always to fall back on and might be living, paycheck to paycheck, you do need to make allowances for that and to, make packages more attractive for them to work for these companies.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah. What would it look like if we had more female women-centered health benefits? Right.
Well, and I think that starts with more women leaders too, because I can't even tell you the blank stare sometimes that I get, even talking to male investors, or some of the questions that I've gotten, that are so intuitive if they would just think about it, but they don't think about it. And it's very obvious. So I think the fact that women are more exposed to this and understand it, even if they haven't had to go through it, we almost always know someone who has. And so just that awareness is huge. And so, having more women leaders would be fantastic, because I think a lot of these things would be taken care of and looked at if we had more women in charge.
Yeah, I can totally picture some of the leaders that I've worked with in the past, and I feel lucky to work with leaders now that are a lot more aware. I can imagine someone saying, well, why should I pay somebody that's leaving the office 3 times a week for a treatment, right? And I've heard leaders say that about, when women are pregnant at the end of their pregnancy, the number of doctor's visits they have, and what would it mean like if partners also had to be there for that doctor's visit.
100%. And also, I think people need to look at the upside as well, because I'll tell you what, nobody works harder in the workplace than moms. So if you have women that are trying to start families and, trying and pregnant, or, about to be moms, there's nobody who's going to work harder, because they don't have time. They don't have time to waste. So they tend to be able to get things done a lot faster, and, budget their time really wisely, because out of necessity. And so looking at that and saying, this is a win for us, because this woman is about to go into a stage of her life where she's going to be a beast. She's going to be working, producing great work in record time, because of the way that her life is changing. And I don't want to put, too much burden on women in that, like, oh, you have to be superwoman. You don't. But we just know that when you have a lot of responsibilities and when you have a family, you want to take care of what you have to take care of and get out of there, because you have other things to do. And looking at the positives in that, I think is huge for employers to realize what they're getting when women are going through this.
Facts. I mean, moms are the best project managers, like hands down. How do they organize the chaos that is child rearing is beyond me. I auntied it up for one day, 24 hours, for a friend that has 4 kids. And I literally asked 10,000 questions about the pickups and the drop-offs of these children. It wasn't a lot. Like, this was not a complicated schedule, but I was like, I'm just going to sit in the car all day. Like, that's my job right now. And I'm going to entertain the children that don't have an activity in the car. Okay, this is my job for 6 hours today. And it was wild that women do that plus their jobs, plus all their household stuff.
I'm in awe of my friends that are moms. Honestly, I see the way that they just, knock it out of the park, because they know that they have to show up and be mom at these times. So they make work, they optimize everything that has to do with work really brilliantly. And even the people on our team that are moms, I watch them do that as well, juggle being on calls, team huddles and at soccer games and, at the same time, doing all these things at the same time. And I'm just going to say that is a unique quality that women tend to have when they become mothers. Not across the board. I won't generalize, but um, you know, by and large, yes, you see it. So I think employers need to be really respectful of the fact that you're getting a multitasking project manager who's going to be on top of what they need to do.
Yeah. I also see a comment here by Jennifer around ageism that, older female leaders, and we've already been talking about men, are not always compassionate, right? There's a lot of, well, I'd never had any leave and I managed it. And to that, I say, Sally, you didn't have TikTok and LinkedIn and freaking 30 different ways for people to get in touch with you at all hours of
And
day and
Sally,
night.
you were miserable. And why would you want other women to be miserable as well? So, like,
Yeah.
that wasn't easy. And so, as things become easier, why we want to make them easier so that future generations of women don't have the same struggles. I don't think there's any, there's no valor in the struggle. It is
Mhm.
like, let's make life easier for people because that also improves their health. We want people to be healthier. So, the burdens that were on women to, perform at these really high levels and have families, and they didn't have the, benefits of tech and kind of the fast moving, technology that we have now. I mean, it was really difficult for them. It's difficult on your integrative health. It's difficult on you can't sleep. There are things that you're not able to do. And so we want people to have better quality of life and more longevity. So yes, like let's look at that. To that end too, with ageism, a lot of women who are struggling with reproductive health challenges in their early to mid 40s are perimenopausal. And menopause is another
Mhm.
area that is ignored in the workplace and also comes with a lot of issues. And so that is definitely something a lot of companies are also and startups are addressing as well, which is exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've
We've
queued
gone
up
over.
a little. Well, we've gone over, and I think that we could be talking here for another hour or the rest of the day. But one of the things that I want to wrap with is, how do we support Claire Fertility, get the data that you need to make this product really great, because so many of us need it now, and so many of us are going to continue to need it as we, age out of our elder millennialism into whatever the next generation is, and wanna have a family.
Yes. So I'm so excited you asked. Thank you. Claire we're about to begin our clinical pilots actually next month. And so we are recruiting for that. Super excited. Let me tell you, this pilot is going to be great for the people who participate. So we are actually partnering with Aura Ring and that company Prove I mentioned, another company that is AI nutrition based. So you'll be able to, log food just by taking a picture with recognition technology. And so we're kind of taking a look at how integrative health affects the ability to conceive, affects treatment. So we are looking for women. You do not have to be actively going through treatment, but you should be actively trying to conceive. And you can email us at pilots@weareclaire.health and just put the subject line, tell me more, and we will get back to you with some information about how you can get involved with the pilots. We're recruiting 100 women. So between now and the end of the month, we're looking for those women. So whether it's you or somebody that you know, please spread the word.
Yes, I love this so much. I love this so much. All right, if you are interested in a pilot, please reach out to Ashley and her team. What they're doing is absolutely brilliant, and I wish I just wish that this was around when I maybe had a chance to be a mama, but that ship has sailed for me. So get in touch with her. Ashley, thank you so much. This has been, I
Thank
feel
you.
like every time we talk, I learn so much, and I'm excited for Claire to like really rock the femtech scene. And thanks everybody for watching. It's been a great conversation. Have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.